Is renting the play in 2024? In today's video, I'm going to go over Zillow's rental market report. A lot of talk about affordability and how housing is so unaffordable. Buying's not something that is possible in 2024. So let's look at the alternative. Let's take a real look at renting, and specifically the rental market report from Zillow. This company's got a lot of data, and see what it looks like so you can make the decision for yourself in 2024. Stay tuned. All right, Matt the Mortgage Guy, greatmortgagebroker.com. That's how you connect me and my team. We can help you in 48 states. Connect with that link down below. I want to jump straight into it. I want to talk about the rental report because I get a lot of pushback and I see it out there. All the fear mongering around buying a home and how it's so unaffordable and rates are this and housing prices are up and nobody can afford to buy. Okay. So the alternative is renting. And what does renting look like? I'm going to go through it. I think it's fascinating to look at the numbers and see exactly what it looks like to rent in this country and why you might want to buy sooner rather than later. So let's jump into it. I'll let the data do the talking. This is Zillow's rental market report for November of 2023. It came out in early December, so the data is relatively fresh. And when you look through this report, it talks about national averages and a rent index. You can actually go here, and if you type in Zillow research on Google, I think that Zillow or Zillow data, they've just got a ton of data, right? So like Zillow or not, you can find a lot of good data here. So when you look at it, like rents surging, and there's going to be headlines around that stuff. Like, what does that look like? And it talks about in this article, when you zoom out, rents have surged by 29.4% over the last 3+ years, right? It talks about since the beginning of the pandemic. So we're talking March of 2020 to December of 23. That's only a 3.5-year period. Rents are up 30%. That is quite a bit, right? And when I go on their report, the cool part about it is there's a report for the whole US. I can go to Sacramento, California and see exactly what it looks like in Sacramento, California. And for a numbers guy like me, I think this is interesting to pull this up and just look at it. And as you hover over it, you can look at typical rent from January of 2015, $1,270. And if you think about it, January of 15, roughly 9 years ago. So we're about to be in January of 2024, $1,270. And you go forward 9 years. And now that new typical rent number is $2,274. Not quite double, but getting real close, right? And so if rent payments double in a decade, there's something to be said, even in a time where, I'll be honest with you, rents on a house versus what you would pay on a mortgage if you put 5 or 10% down on this house, because I'm not going to run numbers and say everybody could put 30% down. The average person with an average down payment of about 8%, last I checked, their mortgage payment is going to be higher than their rent payment. And I get it. You can talk about the debt pay down. You can talk about the appreciation of the house. You can talk about the tax write-off for the interest. You can talk about all that stuff. But for a lot of people, the major thing is how much is coming out of my pocket every single month. If the rent is $2,300 and my payment on that house as a mortgage is $2,800, it's hard to take that leap. What I want you to consider when you're looking at rents is that your rents will not stay the same. Some people get lucky. They paid the same rent for the last decade, but if they're anywhere where the landlord's paying attention, they're increasing their rent. So this is another cool one where it shows year over year. And it kind of surprised me as you hovered over it and saw year over year rent increases that were 7, 8, 9%, even back then, even before we got into these last 3 years where we saw crazy year over year. Imagine year over year rent increases of 15%. And, to extrapolate that to wherever you're renting, if you're renting for $2,000, rent goes up the next year to $2,300. That's a big increase. And then it breaks it down even more here, like month over month. So rents year over year, 2.5% is the latest report, November of 2023. I used 2.5% as an annualized number. Rents have increased year over year by 3.3% over the last few years. I think if you took it back far enough, 2 to 2.5% is probably what it would be over the broader scale. But nonetheless, rents are increasing. And as a renter, you also are never guaranteed that you're going to stay in that same house year after year. Someone could come along and say, I'm going to sell. You've got 60 days to vacate. Trust me, I have that conversation every single day. Another interesting thing to look at is single family and multifamily rents. And this is something that I think is fascinating because I've seen a bunch of building in the multifamily space for rent. Some report came out recently talking about, a nation of renters. People are moving towards wanting to rent single family homes because it's got a backyard. It's got all these amenities, even though the thought is that more people are going to become renters. They're going to be more apt to be looking to rent a home versus an apartment where they're sharing walls and have no yards. Let's see what they say about multifamily versus single family. Typical single family home in November 2148. Single family rents have risen significantly by 35%. Increase of 4.8% year on year. What does it say about multifamily stuff? Oh, here we go. So multifamily, the United States average, I got this drop down. I'll go to Sacramento in a second. $1,845 a month on a multifamily, $2,148 on a single family, as you would expect, right? Single family, generally speaking, are 2, 3, 4 bedrooms. Apartments, multifamily can be a studio, it could be a 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. There's 3 bedrooms, of course, but generally they're going to be smaller and be more affordable. Year over year increases on the single family are up 4.5%, while on multifamily, they're only up 2.5%. Typical rents average this down. Multifamily rents have climbed by 23% with a year-on-year rise of 2.5%. All right, what do they say about navigating rent affordability? Vital concern. All this talk around like this much of your income is going towards your mortgage payment. Well, 30% of your income is going towards your rent payment as well. And the caveat that I talked about earlier that I want to, continue to remind people of is if you purchased a home in 2015 and your payment was 35% of your pay and your pay continued to increase, in 2020 you refinanced to a lower rate, just guessing here, that payment might be 20% of your pay. And you compare that to somebody who's seen their average rent payment from 15 to 24 increase. Remember, we looked at it right here. It increased from $1,270 to $2,274. Without knowing the math, what's that? 80% increase? $1,270 times 1.8. 2286. Pretty darn close, Mr. Mateo. 80% increase. And so again, I'll give it to you that your job and your income's increased as well when you're renting. It's not happening just because you're renting, but your payment's not going down like it is when you buy at one price and one rate and you're able to refinance later into a lower rate, which people in 15 for sure did because they refinanced in 20 or 21. Almost everybody did. People who are buying in 23, 24 in an environment where interest rates are coming down are more than likely going to refinance. And if they don't, at least they have that payment that stays the same. So I didn't necessarily want to dig into this article and go through every single point. I just wanted to, and there's the same thing too, where we've got, the share of income on a rental spiking over the last few years. All the talk about, affordability in housing, it's not just for people buying housing, it's for rent as well. The affordability for, what do they call it? There's a word for it. Shelter cost. Whether it's renting or whether it's buying, you need shelter, right? To be able to afford rent, you need to make $80,000 a year. So I think this is, equally tough data to stomach as the data that gets shared so much more often when it comes to buying. So just wanted to go over that stuff real quick. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you know where to find me. Leave your comments down below, good, bad, and ugly. If you want to connect with me about getting yourself into a home in 2024, we're more than happy to help. GreatMortgageBroker.com. Thanks.